The New Orleans Pelicans finished the 2021 to 2022 NBA season by winning the play-in tournament by beating both the San Antonio Spurs and the Kawhi Leonard-less Los Angeles Clippers. They went on to the NBA playoffs to face a very dominant Phoenix Suns team in the first round of the playoffs as the 8th seed. They pushed this Suns team to 6 games, missing their best player Zion Williamson. Coming into the 2022 to 2023 NBA season, the Pelicans had a lot of expectations now, coming in with Zion Williamson returning to basketball, and with the way they performed against a very good Phoenix Suns team in the playoffs the year before. Today, I'm just kind of looking into and giving my opinion on why the Pelicans had the season that they had, and some improvements I'd like to see them make, and just overall what went wrong with their season. I'm going to be trying to give my unbiased opinion as I am a Pelicans fan, but opinions can be swayed. But regardless, let's get into it. So the Pelicans started off the season as about a 500 team, where with Zion healthy, Brandon Ingram gets injured after the first couple of games. But even without Brandon Ingram, the Pelicans are still playing very phenomenal, and at one point are the 1 seed. And then it all turns downhill when Zion gets injured. The Pelicans had a 17-12 record with Zion, and then he gets injured. Brandon Ingram is still injured. Pelicans start to lose more and more and more. So bad that they go on a 10-game losing streak. And their season really, it was not unsavageable at that point, but at that point, especially how late in the season it was, it's not easy to recover your season. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over um, the players' overall statistics, just to kind of see for everyone how each individual player played and looked on the court. So we're going to start with Brandon Ingram, who averaged 24.7 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, and 5.8 assists per game. He played very well this season when he was on the court. The only problem is when he was off the court, which was a lot of the time due to his toe injury. Uh, he really it really hurt the team and himself overall, as he had a couple games where he went out and it really at like the first quarter, which is obviously really going to tank your stats. But overall, he had a very good season. He really showed his all-around game, especially towards the end of the season when he finally started to ramp up after that toe injury. Where after All-Star break, he averaged 27.3, 6 rebounds per game, and 6.9 assists per game. Very good stats from the young forward, really showing that he's one of the best playmaking forwards in the league. Brandon Ingram is one of my favorite players, so I'm not going. Sorry, let me rephrase. He is my favorite player in the NBA. I'm not going to go too in depth with him, but overall, very good season when he was on the court. We just really need that health to be better for him. Now moving on to a down point, CJ McCollum. Very rocky season, especially if you were to ask any Pels fan. Well, not any. There are a lot of people who still rock with CJ, but majority of NBA fans, even, and Pelicans fans specifically, are not riding with CJ right now. And that's partially due to the end of the season. If you'd caught the last couple of games of the season, he, well, it wasn't pretty. I'll go more in depth with that later, but right now, again, we're just looking average. So overall, he averaged 20.9, so 21, 4.5 rebounds, and 5.7 assists. So overall, you'd say that's pretty good. But the efficiency was very poor from him this year, which is disappointing because he was really here to be that third option. I know, of course, he had to be the second option because we were missing Zion basically the whole year, but you would expect better from your quote unquote all star caliber player. Now, a lot of people are, and himself included, are putting this on the fact that he's needed hand surgery for about 3 months. Um, and while I'm sure it's not easy to be playing with that hand injury, his pre All Star stats were 21 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and 5.9 assists per game. And his post All Star, which is around the time he hurt his hand, I think he'd have 1 month playing without the hand injury, but 20.4 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, and 5.3 assists per game. So really not too much of a difference there. And while overall I'm sure it affects your shooting, well, not sure, but it does affect your shooting. It's not like he was playing phenomenal beforehand. is really my point I want to get at. And for me, it's not even the bad shooting. If he was shooting efficiently from three into the field, that would be nice. But it's for me, it's the decision making. Sometimes CJ just gets into a bad habit of shot chucking, and he just looks like an overall glorified Jordan Clarkson at some points. And while I really like CJ, he's a great player, nice guy. Something has to change with him if the team wants to succeed with him as their lead guard. But yeah, for me personally, it's mostly just the decision making. Next person I want to talk about is Jonas Valanciunas, who averaged 14 points per game and 10 rebounds on 55% shooting, basically. Rounding up a little bit in some areas, but that's fine. Well, actually, rounding up just in the field goal. I actually rounded down slightly in the points per game and rebounds, but that's besides the point. Last year, he averaged 17 and 11, I believe, 17 and 12. I don't have the stats written here, but overall, he looked a lot better last year. And part of that, I think, is due to coaching and him not being able to have as many touches as he would like to see and as efficient of touches for him. But overall, the main problem here is that Jonas Valanciunas is a negative defender, especially at the five position, and for a team that lacks defensive players. I think the Pelicans would really benefit from a defensive style center. And the fact that we have Jonas Valanciunas instead of that really impacts the team. Pick and roll coverage with CJ and Jonas Valanciunas is just not. It doesn't work. And we've seen that all season as teams are able to get whatever they want against us in the paint. That's all I really have for Jonas. He was disappointing, but it's what he does for the team is not what the team needs, and therefore the team lacks because of it. Basically, we need a new center. Moving on to Zion Williamson. 26 points per game, 7.0 rebounds, and 4.6 assists per game. Stats were great when he was on the court, but the main stat we want to look at is 29 games played. Very unfortunate for the team, as once he got injured, it really derailed the team. And I think the problem is it derailed the team mentally too. Chemistry was down, vibes weren't it, and I think this team really benefits off of hype vibes, hype play. So when Zion went out, very unfortunate. Hamstring injury, you have to be careful with them. But the fact that in his postseason interview, no, this was right before the Thunder game, he said that he feels like he's good to go, but mentally he doesn't feel like he's Zion. And my thing is, at some point you just have to get on the court to feel better. And Zion doesn't seem like he wants to do that at this point in his career. And I don't know if it's a mental block, but something is going on with him. He needs to be better in terms of his health. And I don't even think it's just a weight thing, but there's something mentally that's blocking him and making him feel like he can't play. I know he technically wasn't cleared to play, but at some point you have to be the one to get on the court and say, no, I'm playing 20 minutes a game. I'll even just act as a decoy. Because the excuse of I'm not myself, so I'm going to hinder the team is bullshit, really. And I love Zion, but 20 minutes of Zion acting as a decoy is better than whatever the Pelicans could put out, in my opinion. Again, this isn't to hate on Zion. I love Zion. I hope for the best recovery, and I hope he's good to go next season and can play more than 29 games next season. But the fact that he's only played 29 games over the last 2 seasons is very concerning, and it makes you wonder if he can sustain being in the league. I'm not wishing anything. He's obviously phenomenal when he is on the court, but health is a major concern. And the last two players I just want to go over are Trey Murphy, the third, and Herbert Jones. Trey Murphy, phenomenal jump from a semi-rotational player last season that didn't really get a whole lot of PT to, in my opinion, was the second to third most impactful player on the Pelicans this season. 14.5 points per game on 40.6% from three. Phenomenal floor spacer, fits perfectly next to Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. Does exactly what you need. He's a lengthy, athletic player, so the defense will be okay as well. Can obviously improve, But even other areas of his game, like overall shot creation, driving to the basket, phenomenal free throw shooter, just overall great season from Trey Murphy, and he looks like he could be a young up and coming potentially star of the league. And lastly, Herb Jones started out the season rocky. 9.8 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.6 steals per game. The defense is obviously going to be elite, as players like Paul George said he should be in conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. Do I agree with that? Not necessarily, but I do think he should be considered for all defensive teams. 46.9% from the field, 33.5% from three. The main thing is 3-point percentage. At the beginning of the season, he was shooting below 30%, and it was very bad because he would just stand in the corner, and it felt like every shot was a brick. Towards the end of the season, though, he really, because at the beginning of the year, they really hyped him up and said he's been working, and you just didn't see it. The offense honestly looked worse from him. But towards the end of the season, he really started to get his efficiency up, and he started knocking his threes down. So it kind of averaged out. Still only an average little, I'd say below. At this point in the NBA, I'd say below average 3-point shooter, but definitely improved towards the end of the season, and he looked more like himself. I don't know if it's just a confidence thing, but yeah. Overall, not too much progression overall from Herb, it felt like, but still that defensive player that they really need. Um, so I just want to go over after because I already talked about the Zion injury and how the Pelicans were phenomenal at the beginning of the season when he was healthy, but I just kind of want to go over time after that. So they went on that 10-game losing streak. Brandon Ingram finally returns a couple games after that. Um, and at that point, they're still really just below average, especially record wise. BI was looking okay. He didn't fully look like himself yet. But the team, it still just didn't feel like the vibes were there. And at that point, we just looked like a bad team, and it showed. We were legitimately looking like one of the worst teams in the league at that point in time. And then we had this Rockets game, and the Rockets game we did end up losing, unfortunately. But I think that really brought the fight back into us. And then at that point is where Zion Williamson, even though he's hurt, he showed his quote unquote leadership as, he's really holding people accountable. And at that point, it felt like the fire at least came back from the team. They went on, I think, a 5-game win streak. It was against lower scale teams, but a win is a win in the NBA. And then Brandon Ingram really started to get going. That's when his stats really started to go off, putting up triple doubles, first two of his career. Um, and he started really to look like an All NBA level player. You have the record really started to even out. I think they were like 8-2 at one point towards the end of the season. Lost to the Warriors and another one somewhere down the line. I don't know where, but they beat the Nuggets at one point as well. That was without Jokic, but again, a win is a win. And then we get to the last 2 games of the season, including the play-in tournament. The Minnesota game, which was a very winnable game. Brandon Ingram put up, I think it was 21. He was either 21 or 24 in the first quarter. He finished with 42, 12 and something, I believe it was the stat line, something like that. Great game, and they lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And part of that, I'm going to give major props to Anthony Edwards. He was playing phenomenal defense down on Brandon Ingram down the stretch. But then you have, in my notes here, I put CJ choke job. He did not, especially in the final 3 minutes of that game against Minnesota, he looked horrendous. One of the worst performances I've ever seen. He misses 2 free throws in a clutch situation. I think he turned the ball over at one point. He gets blocked by Ant at the rim. He could have gone for a layup, and instead he decided to try to yam it for whatever reason. He barely dunks, and this one time he goes for this dunk, and he gets absolutely shit on. Low-key embarrassing, to be honest. But, and then the same kind of thing, and they dropped that game, so they had to play as the 9th seed against Oklahoma City. And this is really unfortunate because they would have just had to play the Lakers, and if they lose, they still get a second chance anyways. But 2, they go on to play this OKC team, and you have another poor performance from CJ. I don't remember this game as much. I believe I was working while I was on in the background, so I don't remember exactly, but I just remember CJ had another poor closeout to that game. Very disappointing end to the season from him and the Pelicans in general. But yeah, kind of the story of the season. Just underperformed, disappointing, not what should have happened. And I'm gonna I'm not gonna say it's all on CJ McCollum. I'm not gonna say it's all on Jonas Valanciunas. I'm not gonna put it all on Zion and Brandon Ingram's health. Those are all major factors. But one thing I also want to mention is coaching, and in specific, the offense. The offense is just there is no offense. Willie Green has to be better. Um, and he's a young coach. He's new, so he's gonna get better. I hope. If not, he's probably gonna be gone soon if he doesn't improve as a coach. But the problem with the Pelicans offense is that you saw it a little bit at the end of the season, but even with that, you can still see the same flaws. And the problem is that Brandon Ingram needs to be the lead ball handler. The team looks good when he is facilitating. He's able to help everyone get theirs, he's able to get his own, and I hate when the Pelicans do this crap. CJ, or sometimes, actually, I feel like a lot of the time it's Herb who brings the ball up when they do this, but you have Brandon Ingram on the low block or somewhere down low. You have Jonas or whoever's on the court set a screen so that to try to get Brandon Ingram open. And if they're playing good ball denial, it's not going to work. So then he goes through another screen to CJ or whoever's up top, like around the wing for the free throw line. They do this a lot. And if that gets blown out too, then the Pelicans and the announcers, Antonio Daniels will mention this all the time. The Pelicans only are getting into their offense with 10 seconds left in the shot clock. Blah blah blah. So then you have 10. So Brandon Ingram goes to this first screen with Jonas. At this point, there's already like who knows 8 seconds taken off the shot clock because Herb's still bringing the ball up the court, of course. Brandon Ingram comes out this screen, and then CJ sets a screen, and then CJ's guy maybe switches on to Brandon Ingram to deny him the ball. So then you have Herb just standing there because he has no one to pass to because they're blocking off Brandon Ingram from getting the ball. So now you have Herb Jones with the basketball with like 10 seconds left on the shot clock. So then he has to give it to CJ, who has a defender on him. At this point, you're basically saying CJ ISO with 10 seconds left on the shot clock with your primary defender on you. Or they're able to find Ingram, and Ingram has to do the same thing, ISO with 10 seconds left on the shot clock. And it it's just a bad offense. Something needs to change with Willie. I'm not a coach, so I can't really explain what that change needs to be, but it just looks ugly and it doesn't work. So something has to change there. Willie has to be better. It would be nice if the team could buy in more defensively as well, more energy. And sometimes it looks like it's there. But again, I think part of that is just the personnel that the Pelicans have, because defensively they don't have anything other than Herb. That's all I really have in terms of the season, and what the, the Pelicans kind of look like, and why I think they have their issues. But now I just want to kind of go over quickly some of my off-season hopes. The first thing, Jonas needs to go. And I would take a downgrade at center, talent-wise, if we could get someone more defensive-minded. Um, like I'll put up my first option would be Miles Turner or Nicholas Claxton. Those are more so like I think dream type players because I don't see any way of really getting those players unless the Pacers or Nets are really selling, which to be fair they could. But the Pacers just gave Miles Turner this extension, so I really don't see any reason why they would look to move on from him. And then Nick Claxton, contract is great. He's going to want an extension, so maybe the Nets want to move on from him too. But I don't know. And then another thing, like a low usage pass first point guard. So just someone who's going to get low turnovers. I have a couple players that I put down because I don't see the Pelicans getting like a like a Chris Paul, Lonzo Ball type point guard. I know Lonzo's likely going to be out for the season, but just a player like that would be ideal. And I know it's ironic because they had Lonzo Ball, but just someone who can actually get Brandon Ingram the ball, get Zion Williamson the ball. But yeah, a couple players that I put down: Tyus Jones, Jordan McLaughlin, Javon Carter, maybe even Monte Morris, players like that. Um, just going to be sound point guards, most likely off the bench because we'll still have CJ next year. I put down possible CJ trade, but I don't see any team really looking for him because he's on a super massive contract. Um, and he obviously didn't look great. And the Pelicans trade their made the trade for CJ, so I'm sure they want to keep, especially since we haven't seen Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum all together for more than like 10 games. I think they really want to see how that big three, quote unquote, does together. And then I just put some medical staff updates. So something with the medical staff, I don't know. The lack of transparency with the team and the medical staff is very suspect. Like I remember it was after the Knicks game. They were like, we're going to reevaluate, not after the Knicks game, but it was right before when the reevaluation date was. So they were like, we're going to reevaluate Zion in 2 weeks. That was right before the Knicks game, 2 games before the end of the season. And we get this update, and the update is from David Griffin himself. Fuck you, first of all. No, I'm just kidding. It's from David Griffin himself, and he says Zion's just going to continue to do what he's been doing. Like, what the hell kind of an update is that? What does that mean? Is he good to play? Is he good to practice? Is he good to do anything? Can he walk? Like, that was the worst update I've ever heard. And then we hear from Shams, who said Zion's likely to miss the playing tournament, which is an actual update, first of all, but disappointing nonetheless. But yeah, just lack of transparency from the medical staff, the Pelicans organization in general, and I think we just need new personnel there as well. Maybe sports psychiatrists, blah blah blah, because the Zion shit, it's concerning. I also said Willie Green pick out coaching staff. Something needs to change with the coaching because obviously something is not clicking. Because Willie will say shit, and then nothing will change the next game. It'll be the exact same shit, and that was especially during that 10-game losing streak and when with Bi's return and slow start, it looked horrible. He was like, I need to be better. Literally nothing would change. So yeah, he needs new staff, and he needs to improve as well. And then lastly, I just want to mention some of the free agents that I mentioned would be nice for the team. Jakob Poeltl's the big one. I was really hoping they would trade for him at the trade deadline. Didn't happen, unfortunately. Instead, they pick up Josh Richardson, who was okay. Questionable signing, but he was okay. This is more of a dream one as well. Brook Lopez. I see him going back to the Bucks, though, on a decent extension because he's been really good this year. Josh Hart, I miss him. It's my main thing here. He looks really good for the Knicks, especially during the first few games of the Knicks series. Max Strus, just a good shooter. And Seth Curry, also just a good shooter to have on the roster. But yeah, other than that, I think that's all I really have. I kind of got everything out that I wanted to talk about. Just a simple recap. Health, very important. We need to see Brandon Ingram and Zion both healthy. Herb Jones was out in and out a couple times as well. Herb needs to be healthy too. Just overall health from the team. Jonas Valanciunas, get him out of here. I love you, but get him out of here. And CJ has to be better and accept his role more. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. So if you enjoyed this, I guess more so of a rant at this point, but if you enjoyed, please consider hitting that like button, hitting that follow button, and I hope you have a very fantastic rest of your day. Take care and goodbye.